Good morning to everybody. First of all, I was really amazed on the input which before I was listening. I think that the most important point in this all story, which I understand, is that the 4th and 5th of August 2019, which was a game changer event. That event may not be acceptable for everybody, or everybody would not appreciate that, and many in this former state of Jammu and Kashmir are certainly against that event. But as far as the relationship between Pakistan and India is concerned, I think that was a very, very big event. And from there, I think India should see how they can proceed with the similar policy. If they have done something like this in past, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 10 years ago, today the situation would have been totally different. I think on the part of India, their policy was always very, very lenient toward the Pakistan on Kashmir issue. They have not taken a really strong step to oppose Pakistan move in Geneva or in New York, or doing something in counter of the proxy war in Jammu and Kashmir, that I can understand. But to really take a practical step, which could be a breakthrough in the Kashmir issue, this was the first time I have seen during last 30-35 years, and that is making a very, very big difference. Because what happened, because of the Kashmir issue, there is a state of mind in the state of Jammu and Kashmir as well as in Pakistan, because of the uncertain situation. So because of that uncertainty, people of Kashmir in all parts, somehow they are connected with that uncertainty, and they are hoping for a solution which will be in their favor, which actually fuels up the militancy, anti-India sentiments, and all those conspiracies against India, which we have just been discussing. So I think that is this thing number one, that India had to take a drastic action to show that is there any room left to negotiate or to talk about Kashmir issue in future. That's thing number one. And I think is not finalized because of that single step, because what Pakistan was doing before, having a very, very strong policy toward the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and not doing something maybe practical, but at least on the diplomatic or proxy front, they were trying to take some steps so they can be in the discussion when it comes to the Kashmir issue. So, hello? Yeah, you listen to me? Hello?
So yes, sir, we can hear you, sir. So
Please
we can hear
continue.
you. With you, sir, we can
Okay,
hear you.
sorry about that. So now the similar situation is that the one part of state of Jammu and Kashmir, specifically Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, the decision has been made, and that helped people of Jammu and Kashmir to make a decision in recent election, because now they are thinking about a way forward. And I think that will make a big difference, because they are not stuck in a situation where they are dreaming of having an independent or free Kashmir all of a sudden. Instead, they are trying to be the part and parcel of that democratic process, which can really make a change. That's the thing number one. But now what is left is the policy, the Indian policy toward Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistani administered Kashmir. So their policy is that these two areas are the part and parcel of the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, and therefore they are part of India. And because of that stand, Kashmir issue is still stay as a disputed issue, number one. And because of that dispute, as I said, it becomes a problem for the people of that areas, and because of their affiliations and because of their sentiments. If they think that the territory is disputed, then they must keep struggling for the resolution which would be in their favor. And thirdly, if the India can take an action like this in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which was taken on 5th of August, giving a clear policy that the Kashmir issue is out of the table for discussion in future, that should be done in the United Nations as well. I know that in the United Nations, the Kashmir issue is not an active issue anymore. This is something on the back burner, a part of the historical development or proceeding or part of the record. But still, just being this issue there as a disputed issue, which gives Pakistan, their allies, and the people in the state of Jammu and Kashmir are their allies in Pakistan, they give them a false hope, a kind of fake impression that international community is going to help them, especially the United Nations is going to help them to get Kashmir from India. When they say the right of self-determination or the United Nations resolution on state of Jammu and Kashmir, that really means what? That the India should leave the Kashmir, or at least should have a referendum there, so the people of Jammu and Kashmir should join Pakistan. There is no other option which Pakistan accepts. So I think these three things, if we pay some attention to to see how, if we want to remove this Kashmir issue forever from the agenda and from the discussion, then it has to be removed from the United Nations. If we want to remove this issue and we think that this issue has been resolved after 5th of August 2019, then Indian policy toward Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistani administered Kashmir, which we call Azad Kashmir, should be reconsidered and should be reset in new situation. Because if we keep claiming the disputed territories, then dispute is alive, and that makes a big difference. As far as the people of Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir are concerned, so there are different phases they went through. First of all, now this is a accepted truth that the constitutional and practical relationship of the Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir with the Pakistan is not acceptable for the most of the people of that areas if they are ever given a chance to decide on that. They think it was totally unfair, unconstitutional, illegal, and in some instances it was a use of force, and people were forced to be in the situation where they are, either through manipulation or by forcing their leadership to make decision. For example, Karachi Pact of 1949, according to which Gilgit-Baltistan was handed over to Pakistan, that is a pact which is not acceptable for the people of Gilgit-Baltistan. Therefore, they are asking for a fresh look on their relationship with the state of Pakistan, and that is not acceptable with the people of state of Azad Kashmir, because they are equally against that arrangement, and they think that their leadership sold out the Gilgit of Baltistan at that time. So that is their constitutional situation, and obviously is a temporary situation in both parts. Gilgit Baltistan, they have different voices there. Some of them would ask to be the part of Pakistan or to be the province of Pakistan, but there is a considerable opinion in the people of the Gilgit-Baltistan that they don't want to be the part of Pakistan. They either want to be independent or they want a complete liberation, kind of azadi. And the people of Azad Kashmir already, obviously, constitutionally, their situation was unspeakable during first 30, 40 years, because there was no constitutional arrangement. That means there was no legitimate relationship between the capital of Muzaffarabad and capital city of Islamabad. But since 1974, they have an interim act, and that act is the only document which is showing some clues of the relationship between two states or entities. But the people of Azad Kashmir, including their government, which is in a way pro-Pakistan government, but they are not happy with the arrangement of the 1974 interim constitutional arrangement. So therefore, they are asking for more powers. They are asking for their entitlement for the resources of that land, and they are asking for the right to govern the areas they belong to. So basically, the movement for the entitlement of their resources and entitlement to govern those areas, that means the governance should be with the consent of the people of that area, is a very strong movement. The only thing is that that movement is suppressed by different uh, ways. For example, constitutionally, I can give you the latest example that they registered the political parties in Azad Kashmir to participate in the upcoming elections recently, and there were like 120 political parties with different names and different ideologies and from different walks of life, but they only let 28 parties, and almost 25 of them are the religious parties affiliated with different religious extremist fundamentalist groups, and only 3 parties like mainstream belong to Pakistan, like pro-Pakistan People's Party or Nawaz Sharif Muslim League and PTI of Imran Khan. And that means there were at least 45 groups and political parties in Azad Kashmir. They don't believe in the accession of Azad Kashmir to Pakistan. They are against the present constitutional arrangement with the Pakistan. Therefore, they were not allowed to be registered as a political party. That means in upcoming election, which is in few months, they are not allowed to take part in that thing, in the election process. So that means constitutionally, legally, and even by force, the people of that territory are not allowed to participate in the democratic process, and therefore there is a big kind of opposition to that. But because of all these constitutional and practical reasons, you cannot see that on the ground. So keeping in view all this situation, I think that although these 2 areas of Galgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir are under Pakistani administration, or they are in a kind of a waiting situation, but I think these all areas, including Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, they are connected historically, and because of their historical origin and because of the dispute with which they are connected in the United Nations, in the Indian policy toward these areas, and in the Pakistan policies, I think these areas are suffering, and this is one of the reason of their underdevelopment and their miseries and the deprivation of their rights and things like that. So therefore, I think the ultimate solution and the practical solution for whole South Asian region and the Indian continent Indian subcontinent would be to consider these whole areas as a package, and to see that how the will of the people and consent of the people could be practically in different ways. Either that could be a kind of election or democratic process in their areas where they belong to, or by other means. We need to know that consent, and because of that consent, we have to resolve this issue. And I think the last resort now in Pakistan is that they are heavily depending on China, and China is happy with that situation because China has got a big chunk of the territory of the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, and that territory is strategically more important than Gilgit-Baltistan for different reasons. Not only the resources, but also military and strategic reason. That is an important part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir under the occupation of China. So therefore, I think it would be ultimately impossible to resolve this issue without engaging these three forces, the India, China, and Pakistan, to resolve this issue. And if we don't want to resolve this issue and continue the policy of the past, which has been a very, I think, could be a successful apparently, but it was at the end, it was not in the benefit of India or in benefit of Pakistan, because I believe, and everybody should agree with that to some extent, that the money India and Pakistan has been spending on wars and hatred, and as Mr. Sharma has indicated, creating the groups of hate mongers and warmongers, and spending money on proxy wars and instigating people against India. If we would have spent that money and that resources for some kind of a resolution of this issue and kind of a compromise, I would say, or kind of a friendship between both countries, and open the borders and open the business and open the trade and free movement of goods and services and things like this, as all the civilized nation has been doing for last 30-40 years, I think we would have achieved a lot by now. And any time when we have to start from there, because ultimately the Indian subcontinent might have different countries, different states, and different disputes, but ultimately is a one continent. We all belong to that. We speak same languages. We have cultural similarities. We have historical and heritage and things like that. And if we use that, I think that would be the big asset for the people who want peace and progress in that region, and to be the part and parcel of the international community as a respectable nation and as respectable people. Thank you.
So unmute.
Follow-up question, because you may have to leave whenever you wish to leave, but I have a follow-up question here. That we were hearing that in some way, you know, people of government of Pakistan has already appropriated Gilgit-Baltistan by giving it a semi-provincial status. Likewise, I think there is some work being done to do something similar to what has happened in our part of Jammu and Kashmir to the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, that if they have to make a hard choice, they will make certain constitutional changes to relook at the relationship between Pakistan occupied Kashmir and Islamabad to make it de facto another province of Pakistan. Your comments on that?
I think they will never do that, because they don't want to give the rights to the people of that territory, because of the obvious reason they are enjoying the total control and exploitation of the resources on ground in both territories. In Azad Kashmir, lots of water resources, dams, and things like that. And in Gilgit-Baltistan, as you know, what they have there, and because of that, what kind of relationship they have with China. So if they give them that status, that means they have to bring them at par with the other provinces and people of Pakistan. That means that they have to share their resources, which they would not, because that is the typical case of the Balochistan. As you see, what is the dispute with the people of Balochistan? That they don't want to share their resources with them. Although the population of Balochistan is much smaller than that, but the gas and oil and things they are getting from there, they don't want to share. Therefore, they are using force against them. Compared to that, the Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir would be lot more important for them if they will give them a status of the province. That means that the electricity Pakistan has right now, which comes most of that from Mangla Dam, and another 5-6 recently constructed dam in Azad Kashmir, they have to give that royalty to the people of Azad Kashmir, which they will not obviously give. They would not pay for that electricity because Pakistan is already in a big financial crisis, as we all see. So I think that is the one reason. Second reason why I have the feelings that they wouldn't do that, that anti-India lobby within the establishment of Pakistan, being military establishment or civil bureaucracy, they want to keep these two territories in the same situation. So in future, if they need this to use against India, showing it as a disputed territories, showing it as part and parcel of the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, then they don't want to lose this chance. And thirdly, they also concern about the resources, and they know that if we give them the status, then we have to share the resources. So therefore, I think they use these kind of slogans when they are in the election process, or they are interested in their voting, as they did in Galgit Baltistan recently, and after that they just formed a committee. So in Pakistan, in normal practices, when you form a committee, that means you want to delay an issue forever. So the committee will be deliberating and having meetings but never make a decision. So they will keep them in the same situation. That's what is happening with Azad Kashmir for 70 years. These kind of discussions are there, their constitutional rights, empowerment, but they made many committees but never actually did anything which can show that they are interested to change the relationship, because I think this relationship in their benefit right now, and this is also a tool against India. So I think this is connected with the relationship with the India.
And one more issue, like this Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, they very openly make these slogans, ye jo dahshat gardi hai, iske piche vardi hai. I heard similar slogans being raised by people of POK when that LOC march, which was first engineered, incited by Imran Khan's speeches, and subsequently when these 23 parties got together and they started marching, then the military and the security forces used violence against them. And there were these slogans, ye jo vardi hai, ye jo dahshat gardi hai, iske piche vardi hai. What is that is preventing people of POK to express their anger and their frustration against Pakistan?
There are two reasons. One of the reason is that in that territory, which is Pakistani administrative Azad Kashmir, not included Baltistan, there is no violence and terrorism there. As you see, there are very few events we have seen in past. So there is no bloodshed, no fighting go on. The only thing going on is a political fighting. That's the thing number one. So therefore, people are not that much angry and aggressive compared to PTM, Pakhtun Taffuz movement. You see, hundreds and thousands of people, they were killed by the military actions and violated by the military checkposts and things like that. So there was a reaction against military, which was the only visible force in those areas. Azad Kashmir is the situation is different because there is no conflict between military and people right now. There is a conflict between the government and the ruling elite and the people of Azad Kashmir. And you can see that anger. Even yesterday, there was a big strike. Many people, they were arrested, and there was lots of lathi charge and thing with the police. And for police, they use the same words like this. The third thing is that in Azad Kashmir, there is a place of military men. As historically, you know that even before partition, there were like 20,000, more than 20,000 military people coming from the British Army, British Indian Army. And that situation is continue. That is the main source of their income to go and join the Pakistan military. So you can say that that makes a big difference. When you see a military personnel in every second house, who is working in the Pakistan military right now, so they can exercise their influence. And thirdly, their presence in barracks, right? Barracks in different cities, kind of a threat for the people, and they think that it would be very difficult for them to come into conflict like this. As you see, there is a town called Hajira. There were many events we have seen when they came into conflict with military convoys and military personnel living around that area, and it was a big fight for a couple of days and things like this. And then those invisible forces like intelligence agencies and people like that, they come in and they resolve this issue. So basically, that is the problem, that military and the ruling elite has complete control of their territory. They are piloting that for the political reasons, and they have their own people in the politics. They can take control of the things when it is getting out of control and things like this. So you can say that the situation is right now in their control, and that is a balance of terror, I would call it. I wouldn't call it a situation of peace. That is a balance of terror, and that balance may not continue in future if the situation stays same.